The concrete cracked like thunder as the excavator's claw tore into what had been Sarah Chen's backyard pool for 15 years. Across the fence, Karen Whitmore stood, clutching a leather-bound journal, her eyes wild with something between fury and terror. "You don't understand what you've done," she screamed over the machinery's roar. "The water spirits chose this place. They've been feeding here." Sarah laughed until the first dead fish appeared in her kitchen sink that night, miles from any natural water source, until her daughter started sleepwalking toward the empty crater, speaking in languages that didn't exist, until Karen's journal revealed the horrifying truth about why every previous owner of Sarah's house had died by drowning. In a neighborhood built on an ancient lakebed that hadn't seen water in over a century, the demolition crew arrived at 6:30 a.m. sharp, their trucks rumbling down Maple Creek Drive like mechanical beasts awakening a sleeping suburb. Sarah Chen stood in her doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching the lead excavator position itself beside the kidney-shaped pool that had dominated her backyard for the past 3 years since she'd bought the house. "You sure about this, ma'am?" The foreman, a weathered man named Rick, approached with his clipboard. "Pool's in decent shape. Seems like a waste." Sarah nodded firmly. "I'm sure. My daughter nearly drowned in it last month. I can't have that thing in my yard anymore." The memory still made her stomach clench. A 2-year-old Emma, floating face down in the deep end, her long black hair spread like ink across the surface. If Sarah hadn't glanced out the kitchen window at exactly the right moment, she shuddered and took another sip of coffee. "All right then. We'll have her filled and leveled by end of day." As Rick walked back to his crew, Sarah noticed her neighbor Karen Whitmore standing at the fence line, her usually pristine blonde hair uncombed, her floral bathrobe hanging loose around her thin frame. Even from 30 feet away, Sarah could see the woman's hands shaking. "Morning, Karen," Sarah called out, attempting neighborly pleasantries despite their rocky relationship. Karen had been nothing but hostile since Sarah moved in, complaining about Emma's bicycle on the sidewalk. Reporting Sarah to the HOA for her non-regulation mailbox, leaving passive-aggressive notes about proper trash can placement. Karen didn't respond. She just stared at the pool with an expression Sarah had never seen before. Not anger or annoyance, but something closer to horror. The excavator's engine roared to life, drowning out any possibility of conversation. Sarah retreated inside to get Emma ready for school, pushing away the uneasy feeling that had settled in her chest. By the time she returned from dropping Emma off at Riverside Elementary, the crew had drained the pool completely. The exposed concrete looked stark and foreign, like a wound carved into the earth. Sarah had always hated the pool's location too, close to the house, too deep for Emma to use safely, but seeing it empty made her realize how much it had defined the space. Mrs. Chen. Rick appeared at her elbow, holding something in his gloved hand. "We found this wedged behind the skimmer. Thought you might want it." Sarah looked down at a small, carved stone figurines, smooth river rock shaped into what appeared to be a woman with flowing hair, her arms raised skyward. The craftsmanship was exquisite, ancient-looking, but Sarah had never seen it before. "It's not mine," she said. "Previous owners must have left it. You can throw it away." Rick shrugged and pocketed the figurine. "Suit yourself." The jackhammering began after lunch, the concrete shattering in jagged chunks that the crew loaded into a dump truck. Sarah tried to work from her home office, but the noise made concentration impossible. Every crash and rumble seemed to vibrate through the house's foundation. Around 3 o'clock, a sharp knock interrupted the mechanical symphony. Sarah opened the front door to find Karen standing on her porch, no longer in her bathrobe, but dressed in dark jeans and a black sweater that made her pale skin look ghostly. In her hands, she clutched an old leather journal, its pages yellowed and bulging. "You have to stop them," Karen said without preamble. Her blue eyes were bloodshot, frantic. "You don't understand what you're doing." Sarah blinked. "Excuse me, the pool? You can't remove it. Not now, not after." Karen's voice cracked. She looked over Sarah's shoulder toward the backyard, where another section of concrete crashed to the ground. "How long have you lived here?" 3 years. "Karen, what's this about?" 3 years. Karen nodded as if this confirmed something terrible. "And the Hendersons before you lasted how long?" 2 years. "And the Matsuis before them?" Sarah frowned. The realtor had mentioned the house had changed hands frequently, but she'd assumed it was due to the declining neighborhood values after the economic downturn. "I fail to see how that's relevant too. They all had pools, Sarah. Every single family. And they all removed them eventually." Karen's grip tightened on the journal. "Do you know how the Hendersons died?" The question landed like a physical blow. Sarah had heard whispers from other neighbors about a car accident, something involving the interstate during a storm, but she'd never pressed for details. "That's really none of my business." "Drowning," Karen continued as if Sarah hadn't spoken. "Their car went into Miller's Creek during a flash flood. Funny thing about flash floods, they don't usually happen in October, and Miller's Creek hasn't had enough water to drown a mouse in 20 years. Despite herself, Sarah felt a chill. Coincidence? And the Matsuis found dead in their apartment bathtub after they moved to Phoenix. Both of them. The police called it a murder-suicide, but the tub wasn't big enough for 2 adults. Forensics couldn't explain how they both drowned. The jackhammering stopped suddenly, leaving an eerie silence that made Karen's words seem to echo. Sarah crossed her arms over her chest. What exactly are you suggesting? Karen opened the journal, revealing pages covered in spidery handwriting, newspaper clippings, and what looked like hand-drawn maps. This neighborhood was built on a lakebed, Sarah. Lake Nayarit was here for thousands of years before they drained it in 1952 to build these houses. But just because they moved the water doesn't mean they moved everything that lived in it. Sarah stared at the journal's contents, old photographs of a vast, dark lake surrounded by willows, articles about mysterious drownings dating back to the 1800s, and pages of notes written in multiple hands. This is insane. The previous owner of your house, Mrs. Kowalski, she gave me this journal before she died, said it was passed down from owner to owner, that everyone needed to know the truth. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. The spirits didn't leave when they drained the lake. They just concentrated. Certain spots where the water was deepest, where they fed the most. Your backyard sits on what used to be the lake's center. Fed on what? Whatever they could get. Fish, birds, the occasional swimmer who ventured too far from shore. The old newspaper reports called them unusual drowning incidents. People found dead in 3 feet of water. Experienced swimmers who just forgot how to swim. Sarah shook her head, backing away from the door. You're talking about ghost stories, Karen? I don't have time for the pools. Sarah, don't you see? Every family builds a pool in that exact spot because something calls them to it. The spirits need water to manifest, to hunt. They influence the homeowners, make the idea seem irresistible. But eventually, the families realize what's happening: children nearly drowning, strange accidents, dreams of being pulled underwater. So they remove the pools, thinking that will solve the problem. And Karen's laugh was bitter, desperate. It just makes them angry. Another crash from the backyard made both women jump. Through the living room window, Sarah could see the crew had broken through to the pool's foundation, exposing dark earth that looked almost muddy despite the dry weather. 3 days, Karen said urgently. That's how long it takes after the pool is completely gone. 3 days, and then the water finds another way. It seeps up through cracks in your foundation, appears in your pipes, fills your basement, and once it's inside your house, once it has access to your family. Stop. Sarah's voice was sharper than she intended. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but my daughter nearly died in that pool. I'm not keeping it just because you think it's haunted. Your daughter nearly drowned because she was being called, Karen said desperately. The spirits were testing her, seeing if she was ready. If you remove their source of power, they'll take her anyway. They'll take anyone they can reach. Sarah slammed the door, her heart pounding. Through the window, she watched Karen stand motionless on the porch for several minutes before finally walking away, clutching the journal to her chest. By evening, the pool was gone. The crew had filled the cavity with gravel and dirt, leaving behind a level patch of disturbed soil that looked like a fresh grave. Sarah stood at her kitchen window, watching the last dump truck disappear down the street, and tried to shake the feeling that she'd made a terrible mistake. Emma bounced through the door at 5:30, her school backpack trailing behind her. Mommy, why is our backyard all messy? We removed the pool. Remember, now you'll have space for a swing set. Emma wrinkled her nose. But I liked the pool. It sang to me sometimes. Sarah froze. What do you mean? It sang to you. At night, when I couldn't sleep, I could hear it through. The emergency flashlight cast dancing shadows across the upstairs hallway as Sarah pulled Emma into the master bedroom and locked the door. Below them, the sound of water continued, not the rushing of pipes, but something slower, more deliberate, like footsteps in a shallow pond. Mommy, I'm scared. Emma pressed her face against Sarah's shoulder, her small body trembling. I know, baby. We're going to be okay. Sarah's voice sounded steadier than she felt. She moved to the bedroom window, hoping to signal for help, but the street outside looked wrong. The other houses were dark, not just their lights off, but completely black, as if they'd been swallowed by the night itself. Only Karen's house remained illuminated, every window blazing with warm yellow light. A wet sound on the stairs made Sarah's blood freeze. Slow, measured steps, but not human footfalls. These sounds were too soft, too fluid, like someone walking, barefoot through puddles that shouldn't exist. Sarah, the voice came from just outside the bedroom door, melodic and strange. Sarah, Chen. It wasn't Karen's voice, though it carried a similar cadence. This voice seemed to come from everywhere. At once the walls, the floor, the very air around them. We've been waiting so long to meet you properly. Emma lifted her head from Sarah's shoulder. That's one of the pool ladies. The doorknob turned slowly, though Sarah was certain she'd locked it. The door swung open with a soft creak, revealing the upstairs hallway, but it wasn't the same hallway they'd run through minutes before. Water covered the carpet, ankle deep and perfectly still, reflecting the flashlight's beam like black glass. A figure stood at the far end of the hall, translucent and shimmering. The water spirit had taken the form of a woman in her 30s, with long dark hair that moved as if she were still submerged. Her dress appeared to be made of lake water itself, flowing and reforming with each slight movement. You removed our home, the spirit said. gliding forward without disturbing the water's surface. 53 years we've waited for someone to build us a proper dwelling. 53 years of temporary vessels, swimming pools, hot tubs, ornamental fountains. But your pool was different. It sat in the exact center of our old feeding grounds. Sarah backed toward the window, pulling Emma with her. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I can have them put it back too late. The spirit's smile was beautiful and terrible. You've broken the seal. The earth drinks deep tonight. More figures appeared in the hall with dozens of them. All women, all formed from the same dark water. Some appeared young, others ancient, but they all shared the same ethereal beauty and predatory grace. We are the naiads of Lake Naiad, the first spirit continued. For millennia, we fed on what the lake provided. Fish, fowl, the occasional human who ventured too far from shore. But when they drained our waters, we had to adapt. The bedroom window behind Sarah rattled, and she turned to see water seeping through the glass, not breaking it, but somehow passing through the solid material like it was permeable. The water formed rivulets that ran down the walls, pooling on the hardwood floor. Every family that's lived in this house has served us, one way or another. The Kowalskis lost their son, such a sweet boy, only 6 years old. The Matsuis gave us their elderly father. The Hendersons provided 2 teenagers. Emma whimpered, and Sarah realized the child understood exactly what the spirit was saying. But you, Sarah Chen, you tried to starve us. You took away our dwelling and gave us nothing in return. The spirit's eyes, dark as lake water at midnight, fixed on Emma, so we'll take what we need directly. No. Sarah stepped in front of her daughter. Take me instead. I'm the one who made the decision. The spirits laughed us sound like water, lapping against stone. Adult minds are too rigid, too filled with disbelief. Children, however, children believe in magic. They don't fight the call of deep water. Emma stepped out from behind her mother, her face strangely calm. I can hear them singing again. Mommy, they want me to come swimming. Emma? No. Sarah grabbed her daughter's arm, but the child's skin felt cold and slippery, like she'd already been in the water for hours. It's not so bad, Emma said in a voice that didn't quite sound like her own. They showed me. In the pool. When I went under, they showed me their world. It's beautiful there. Mommy, no school, no homework, just swimming and singing forever. The water in the hallway began to rise, lapping at the bedroom threshold. Sarah realized with horror that Emma was walking toward it, drawn by something Sarah couldn't see or hear. The previous families understood eventually. The lead spirit said they learned to accept the bargain. One life to feed us, and we would leave the others alone. Your neighbor, Mrs. Whitmore, she's been our guardian for 15 years. She watches, she records, she helps new families understand their obligations. Karen knew about this the whole time. Karen's daughter was one of the first we took, after the lake was drained. Little Melissa Whitmore, such a bright child. Karen fought us at first, just as you're fighting now, but she learned to see reason. Through the window, Sarah could see Karen's house more clearly now. The woman stood in her kitchen, the leather journal open on the counter. She was reading aloud, her lips moving in rhythm with some ancient incantation. She's helping you, Sarah realized. She's helping all of us. Karen knows that resistance only makes things worse. The Hendersons tried to fight. They packed up and moved to another state. We followed them, of course. Water flows everywhere, Sarah. There's no escape from what we are. Emma had reached the edge of the rising water. She knelt down and dipped her fingers in, giggling as phosphorescent ripples spread from her touch. Stop her. Sarah lunged forward, but her feet stuck to the floor as if the hardwood had become as viscous as mud. The child comes willingly, the spirit said. That's always been our preference. Willing offerings taste, sweeter. Emma stood up, water dripping from her hands. When she turned back to face her mother, her eyes had changed. They now held the same dark depth as the spirit's, reflecting not the flashlight's beam but something deeper, older. Don't be sad, Mommy. I'll visit you in dreams sometimes. The children do. That's when Sarah heard the sound Emma had mentioned before. Singing faint, but growing stronger. Women's voices harmonizing in languages that predated human speech. Melodies that seemed to bypass her ears and resonate directly in her bones. The singing was coming from below, from the living room where the pool used to be. They're not just in the house, Sarah whispered. They're rising from the ground itself. The pool was never the source, the lead spirit confirmed. It was merely a window. We've always been here, Sarah, sleeping beneath your foundation, waiting for the right moment to reclaim what was taken from us. Emma took another step toward the hallway, and Sarah felt something inside her snap, not break, but transform. The maternal instinct that had driven her to remove the pool in the first place now blazed into something fiercer, more primal. You want to take my daughter? Sarah's voice carried an edge that surprised even her. Then you'll have to go through me first. She grabbed the flashlight and hurled it at the lead spirit. The beam passed harmlessly through the creature's form, but the impact seemed to startle her. For just a moment, the spirit's perfect composure cracked. Interesting, the spirit murmured. Most parents beg at this point. I'm not most parents. Sarah snatched Emma's hand, pulling her back from the water's edge. To her relief, The child came willingly, whatever hold the spirits had over her wasn't complete yet. The bedroom door slammed shut on its own, and Sarah heard the lock engage, but she knew it wouldn't hold for long. Water was already seeping under the door, spreading across the hardwood in purposeful streams. She ran to the window and tried to open it, but the frame wouldn't budge. The glass felt ice cold against her palms, and she could see her breath fogging in the suddenly frigid earth. "Mommy, look," Emma pointed to the window. Outside, the entire neighborhood had changed. Where Maple Creek Drive should have been, dark water stretched as far as Sarah could see. Streetlights rose from the depths like mechanical reeds, their bulbs glowing beneath the surface. Houses sat partially submerged, their rooflines forming islands in a vast lake that couldn't possibly exist. "Lake Nayad," Sarah breathed. "You're showing me what it used to look like, what it will look like again." The spirit's voice came through the walls. "Your world is temporary, Sarah. Water is eternal." The door handle turned again, and this time Sarah didn't wait to see what would emerge. She grabbed the bedroom chair and smashed it against the window. The glass spiderwebbed but didn't break. "The windows won't shatter," Emma said matter-of-factly. "They showed me that too. The house is like a fishbowl now. We can see out, but we can't leave." Sarah hit the window again, putting all her strength behind it. A few shards fell away, but the opening was too small to climb through. Behind them, water flowed under the door in greater volume, and the singing grew louder. More voices joined. The chorus children's voices, sweet and high, calling Emma's name. "All the other kids are here," Emma said, her voice dreamy. "Tommy Henderson, Lisa Matsui, Marcus Kowalski. They want to play with me. Emma, listen to me." Sarah knelt down and gripped her daughter's shoulders. "Those aren't your friends. They're something else, wearing friendly faces. We have to find a way out of here." But even as the Comfort Inn on Highway 34 smelled like industrial disinfectant and stale coffee. But to Sarah, it represented sanctuary. Rick had paid for the room himself, refusing Sarah's attempts to reimburse him, and posted one of his crew members in the parking lot just in case. "Ma'am," Rick said, settling into the room's single chair while Sarah and Emma huddled together on the bed. "I've been in construction for 23 years. I've seen burst pipes, foundation failures, sewer backups, hell. I once saw a house get swallowed by a sinkhole. But what happened to your place tonight? That wasn't natural." Sarah wrapped the hotel bathrobe tighter around her still damp clothes. "You believe us? I believe something scared you both half to death. And I believe that water didn't come from any pipes I've ever seen." Rick leaned forward, his weathered face serious. "My grandfather used to tell stories about the old lake. Said there were things living in it that shouldn't have been there. Of course nobody believed him." Emma, who had been silent since their escape, suddenly spoke up. "The little girl across the street? She's been dead for a long time, hasn't she?" Rick's eyes widened. "What little girl?" "Karen's daughter, Melissa." Emma's voice was matter. "The way children speak about things adults find impossible. She drowned in the lake before they built the houses. But she didn't go away. None of them did." Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. "Emma, how do you know that name?" "She told me. When I was underwater in the pool last month, she said she'd been waiting for another little girl to play with." Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed far too old. "She's lonely, Mommy. They all are." Rick stood abruptly and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain to peer into the parking lot. "We need to call someone. Police, maybe, and tell them what?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "That our house is haunted by lake spirits. They'll think we're having some kind of breakdown." "Then what do you suggest?" "You can't go back there." Sarah was about to respond when her cell phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something compelled her to answer. "Hello, Sarah. Thank God." Karen's voice was barely above a whisper, strained and desperate. "Are you and Emma safe? How did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter. Listen to me carefully. You have maybe an hour before they expend their territory. The longer they're active, the stronger they become. Right now they're contained to your property. But if they're not appeased by dawn, appeased how?" A long pause. "They want Emma, Sarah. They've always wanted Emma. From the moment you moved in, they've been preparing her." Sarah felt Emma stiffen beside her. Why her specifically? Because she's young enough to adapt, old enough to retain her memories. They don't just want to feed, they want companions. Eternal playmates for the children they've already taken. Karen's voice cracked. "Melissa has been alone for so long. Your daughter, my baby girl. She was 6 when she drowned. That was 1985. 3 years before they finished draining the lake. The spirits took her down to the deepest part, where the water was coldest and darkest. When the bulldozers came, she came with them, trapped in whatever water remained." Sarah could hear something in the background of Karen's call, that same ethereal singing she'd heard in the house. "Where are you calling from?" "I'm in my basement. It's the only place in the house where she can't hear me clearly." "Sarah, you have to understand I've spent 15 years trying to protect other families, trying to give the spirits what they need so they won't spread beyond our neighborhood. But it's never enough. They always want more." Rick was listening intently, his face grim. He gestured for Sarah to put the phone on speaker. "What do you mean, what they need?" Sarah asked. "A child every few years. Always from the house that sits over their original feeding grounder house. The families never last long once they realize what's expected of them. Most move away, but that just delays the inevitable. The spirits follow, and eventually they take what they're owed. You let children die. I tried to find other ways. Karen's voice rose, then dropped again quickly. I researched for years, consulted with psychics, paranormal investigators, even a Catholic priest. Nothing worked. The spirits are too old, too powerful. They were here before humans walked this continent. Emma tugged at Sarah's sleeve. Ask her about the journal. The journal? Sarah said. Emma wants to know about the journal? Another long pause. It contains everything. The history of the lake, the nature of the spirits, the experiences of every family that's lived in your house. Mrs. Kowalski started it in 1967 after they took her son. Each family adds their story before they ... before they fulfill the bargain, or before they run away and get killed anyway. Yes. Rick stepped closer to the phone. Ma'am, this is Rick Brennan, the contractor who removed Mrs. Chen's pool. Is there anything in that journal about how to stop these things? Some kind of banishment, ritual, or protective ward? There was something, Karen said slowly. A ritual. The local Potawatomi tribe used to perform every spring. They called it the settling of waters, a ceremony to keep the lake spirits peaceful, but it required ... double quotes. Required what? A willing sacrifice. Someone who would offer themselves to the spirits in exchange for protection of the tribe. The chosen person would be honored for a full year, then would walk into the lake at the spring equinox and never return. Sarah felt sick. That's what you want me to do? Walk into water that doesn't exist anymore and drown myself? No, you don't understand. The ritual doesn't require death, it requires transformation. The sacrifice becomes a guardian, a bridge between the spirits and the human world. They lose their mortal form but retain their consciousness, their ability to negotiate and maintain balance. That's still death, Karen. It's the only way to protect Emma, and ... And if you do this, if you take my place as guardian, Melissa might finally be at peace. She might be able to move on. The hotel room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Sarah looked at Emma, who was staring at the phone with an expression far too mature for an 8-year-old mummy. Emma said quietly, "What? If we don't run away, what if we fight them?" Rick nodded approvingly. The kids got the right idea. These things have been bullying families for decades. Maybe it's time someone stood up to them. With what? Sarah asked. They control water itself. They can appear anywhere there's moisture in the air. Not anywhere. Karen's voice came through the speaker. They're strongest at the Saucier property, but their power diminishes with distance. That's why they can't cross property lines without significant effort. So we stay away from the house. For how long? They're patient. Sarah, they've waited 70 years for the perfect setup. They'll wait 70 more if they have to. But Emma, ... Emma will grow up knowing they're out there. She'll never be safe near any body of water. They'll call to her in swimming pools, bathtubs, even rain puddles. Emma stood up suddenly, her small fists clenched. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of running away from the pool ladies. Pool ladies? Rick asked. That's what I call them. They're not all bad. You know, some of them used to be regular people, like the kids they took. They remember being human. Emma looked at her mother with startling intensity. What if we gave them something they want more than me? Like what? Like their home back? Sarah stared at her daughter. Emma, what are you thinking? The lake. They missed the lake, right? What if we could give it back to them? Rick was already shaking his head. Kid, that lake covered hundreds of acres. The whole neighborhood is built on the old lake bed. We can't just flood an entire subdivision. No, Emma said patiently, but we could make them think we did. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the hotel room's television flickered to life. The screen showed static for a moment, then cleared, to reveal an image that made Sarah's blood freeze. Emma stood on a wooden dock that stretched out over dark water. But it wasn't the Emma sitting beside her in the hotel room. This Emma was translucent, shimmering like the spirits themselves. She wore a white dress that flowed like liquid, and her eyes held that same otherworldly depth Sarah had seen earlier. This is what I'll become if I go with them, the Emma on the screen said, her voice carrying the strange harmonic quality of the spirit's song. But I'll still be me, mommy, just ... different. The real Emma was staring at the screen in fascination, rather than fear. She's pretty, she said simply. Emma, no. Sarah grabbed her daughter's hand. That's not really you. It's them showing you what they want you to see. Actually, Karen's voice came through the phone. It probably is her. Or rather, it's the version of her that exists in their realm. They've been building a place for her there, shaping her spiritual essence to match their world. The image on the screen changed, showing a vast underwater palace made of coral and crystallized water. Children swam through the halls like graceful fish, their laughter creating streams of bubbles that rose toward an impossibly distant surface. It's beautiful, Emma breathed. Sarah yanked the television's power cord from the wall, but the screen remained active. The images continued, Emma playing with other children in endless summer. never growing older, never knowing pain or loss or the crushing weight of adult responsibility. There in the hotel's electrical system, Rick muttered, pulling out his cell. The man in the ranger uniform looked to be in his 60s, with silver hair and deep-set eyes that held the same otherworldly quality Sarah had seen in the spirit. His name tag read Thomas Riverwind, Supernatural Territorial Mediator. Mrs. Chen, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to impossible situations. I apologize for the dramatic entrance. The spirits can be theatrical when they're agitated. Sarah stared at the impossible scene beyond the hotel doorway, crystal clear, water stretching to a horizon lined with ancient oaks, their branches heavy with Spanish moss that hadn't grown in this region for over a century. Who are you? She managed. Someone who should have been here decades ago. Riverwind stepped across the threshold, and Sarah noticed his boots left wet prints on the hotel carpet. I'm a mediator for the Department of Extraordinary Natural Resources. We handle disputes between human development and pre-existing supernatural claims. Rick, still clutching his cell phone, stared at the ranger. There's a government department for ghost problems, established in 1924 by the Coolidge administration after a particularly nasty incident involving displaced river spirits in Tennessee. We're not well known, for obvious reasons. Riverwind glanced around the flooded hotel room with practiced assessment. This situation should have been flagged when the lake was drained in 1952, but there was a paperwork error. The spirits were never properly relocated. Emma stepped forward, showing no fear of the otherworldly scene. Can you make them go away? I can help them find peace, which amounts to the same thing. Riverwind knelt to Emma's eye level. But first I need to understand exactly what happened here. The spirits are unusually agitated. They've been sending distress signals across the entire Great Lakes supernatural network. The singing that had been constant background noise suddenly stopped. In the silence that followed, Karen's voice came through Sarah's phone, barely a whisper. He's real, Thomas Riverwind. My grandmother told me stories about him, said he helped negotiate the treaty that established the reservation boundaries back in the 1800s. Riverwind's expression softened. Karen Whitmore. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. Your letters were, compelling. You knew about this. Sarah turned to stare at the phone. I've been writing to every supernatural authority I could find for 15 years. Karen's voice cracked, begging someone to help Melissa, to help all of them. But the department is understaffed, underfunded. They only respond to level 5 incidents. What's a level 5 incident? Rick asked. Reality breakdown across multiple dimensional barriers, Riverwind said grimly, which is what we're looking at if these spirits aren't properly relocated before dawn. The longer they remain active outside their natural element, the more they destabilize local space-time. As if to illustrate his point, the hotel room began to shift around them. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like living tissue. Through the window, Sarah could see that the parking lot had become a shallow marsh, complete with cattails and herons. The good news, Riverwind continued, pulling out an official-looking clipboard, is that the spirits have a legitimate claim under the Supernatural Displacement Act of 1963. The bad news is that proper relocation requires consent from all affected parties, including the current residents of the former Lake beyond. All the residents. Sarah felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. How many houses are we talking about? 47 properties built on the original Lake Naiad, plus the shopping center, the elementary school, and approximately 3 miles of Highway 34. Rick whistled low. You're talking about relocating an entire community. Not necessarily. Riverwind flipped through pages on his clipboard. There are alternatives. The spirits could be granted easement rights to their original territory, allowing them to exist alongside human development. But that would require ongoing cooperation from all residents. Emma tugged at Riverwind's sleeve. What about just giving them a new lake? The ranger's eyebrows rose. Explained they don't really want to hurt anyone. They're just displaced and scared. What if we found them somewhere new to live? Somewhere better than what they lost. Riverwind studied Emma with new interest. That's actually a viable option under Section 12 of the relocation protocols. But it would require finding a suitable body of water and convincing the spirits to voluntarily relocate. The ethereal singing began again, but this time it sounded different, less mournful, more hopeful. The water around their feet began to recede, and Sarah felt the oppressive atmosphere in the room lighten slightly. They're listening. Emma said they like that idea. There's Miller's Reservoir about 20 miles north, Rick offered. State property, mostly undeveloped. Good fishing. From what I hear, Riverwind consulted another document. Miller's Reservoir. Yes, that could work. It's within the spirit's traditional territory, approximately the same surface area as the original lake, but we'd need to ensure the current ecosystem could support additional supernatural inhabitants. A new voice joined the conversation, not Karen this time, but emanating from the water itself. It was the lead spirit Sarah had encountered in her house, but her tone was different now, less predatory, more diplomatic. We would consider relocation, the spirit said, but we require assurance that our new home would be protected from future Development. Riverwind nodded, as if negotiating with water spirits was perfectly routine. I can arrange for the reservoir to be designated as a supernatural preserve under federal protection. No development, no draining, no chemical contamination. In our children. The spirit's voice carried infinite sadness. Those who have been with us for decades, what becomes of them? Sarah felt Emma tense beside her, and she realized this was the crucial moment. The spirit was talking about all the children who had been taken over the years, including Melissa Whitmore. The children would have a choice, Riverwind said carefully. Those who wish to remain as spirits may accompany you to the new preserve. Those who wish to move on to whatever comes after human existence would be free to do so. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then, impossibly, Karen's voice came not from the phone but from the water itself. Melissa? Karen's voice was thick with tears. Baby, what do you want to do? A child's laughter bubbled up from the depths, genuine, joyful, free of the haunting quality that had characterized the spirit's communications. I want to go swimming with the fish, Mummy. Real swimming. In clean water, with sunlight. But, can I visit you sometimes? In dreams? Of course. Baby? Of course you can. Emma stepped to the edge of the receding water. What about the other kids? Do they get to choose too? All of them. The lead spirit confirmed. We have held them too long out of our own loneliness. It is time to let them decide their own fates. Riverwind made notations on his clipboard. I'll need 48 hours to complete the paperwork and coordinate with the park's service. In the meantime, the spirits must return to their current location and maintain the status quo. What about Sarah and Emma? Karen's voice asked. Are they safe? The lead spirit's attention turned to Emma, and Sarah felt her daughter straighten under that otherworldly gaze. The child has shown wisdom beyond her years, the spirit said. She saw what others could not, that we acted from pain, not malice. For this understanding, we release all claims upon her. Emma smiled her first genuine, carefree smile since the ordeal began. Thank you, and I'm sorry about your lake. I hope you like your new home. The boardwalk beyond the hotel door began to fade. Replaced gradually by the mundane corridor of the Comfort Inn, the water receded completely, leaving only damp carpet as evidence of what had transpired. Riverwind handed Sarah an official business card. The relocation should be complete by Friday. You're free to return to your home once the spirits have departed. I'll have a crew come out to assess any residual supernatural resonance. What about Karen? Sarah asked. Mrs. Whitmore will need counseling to adjust to life without her daughter's spirit nearby. 15 years of supernatural influence leaves marks on the psyche, but she'll be free to live a normal life again. Rick shook his head in amazement. In 40 years of construction, I've never seen anything like this. Hopefully you never will again, Riverwind said, though if you do, you have my card. As the ranger prepared to leave, Emma called after him. Mr. Riverwind, will you make sure they're happy in their new home? He smiled, the first fully human expression Sarah had seen from him. I'll personally conduct quarterly inspections. Young lady, that's a promise. 3 months later, Sarah stood in her backyard, watching Emma play on the new swing set Rick's crew had installed where the pool used to be. The grass had grown back thick and green, showing no trace of the supernatural events that had nearly torn their lives apart. Miller's Reservoir had been officially designated as the Lake Naiad Supernatural Preserve, complete with federal protection and a small research station where scientists studied the unique ecosystem that had developed. Since the spirit's relocation, tourist fishing was permitted, but overnight camping was strictly forbidden, a condition the spirits had specifically requested. Karen Whitmore had sold her house and moved to Arizona to be closer to her sister. Before leaving, she'd given Sarah the leather journal. Its pages now